Welcome, dear viewers, to the Kodai World channel. I am your speaker, Kwang Dui. It is a pleasure to accompany you in today's video. In December 2023, the capital city of Pyongyang solemnly held the National Congress of Mothers. Thousands of North Korean women in vibrant traditional hanboks sat neatly aligned below, attentively listening to the speech on stage. And of course, the speaker was none other than Kim Jong Un, General Secretary of the Workers' Party of Korea. Kim repeatedly reminded mothers that they must raise their children to be successors to the Juche ideology, who are fully devoted to their country. Then suddenly, his voice rang out, filled with emotion, calling upon mothers to sacrifice their children for the nation, to care for the destiny of the country. As the story reached its climax, Mr. Kim pulled out a pristine white handkerchief he had prepared in advance and wiped away the ceaseless tears streaming from the corners of his eyes. Whether Mr. Kim actually cried or not is something no one can be sure of, as the cameras were positioned quite far away. However, from the vantage point of the audience below, many reported seeing clearly that he appeared to have shed tears. Thus, the delegates did not want to be outdone either. From the elderly women to the young ladies, each and every one shed tears of deep emotion. It's hard to know for sure if their tears are genuine, because when the camera lens is pointed at them, and the leader is shedding tears, it would be truly dangerous if the audience did not cry along. It must be acknowledged that the acting skills of North Korean performers can reach the pinnacle, truly unparalleled in the world. At the director's cue, the actors can cry instantly, pouring out genuine emotions without any prior rehearsal. Until now, leader Kim Jong Un has always appeared before the public with an imposing and solemn image. Yet this time, he was moved to tears over the matter of childbirth. Clearly, this is a meticulously staged propaganda performance. Shedding tears at the Mothers' Congress does not make him appear weak. But on the contrary, it also demonstrates humanity and approachability, vividly portraying the image of a child and a father, easily awakening and stirring the emotions of the audience. Although aware that both the stage and the stands are part of a scripted performance, Kim Jong Un still attempts to feign tenderness in a forced manner, aiming to yangai policies urging women to bear more children to serve the nation. This indicates that North Korea is truly facing a severe demographic crisis. Just how serious is this issue? And could this be the reason why North Korea might cease to exist within the next 50 years? North Korea is a mysterious and reclusive country, where all information is concealed and almost everything is regarded as a state secret. Therefore, the outside world can only estimate their population at a relative level. According to some pessimistic estimates, if this population decline trend continues, North Korea risks disappearing from the world map in the not-too-distant future. Looking back, since the end of the Korean War, the northern part of the peninsula, characterized by its predominantly mountainous terrain, harsher and colder climate, and less developed agriculture compared to the south, has naturally had a lower population density. This is entirely understandable. However, the population is not only a labor force but also a source of military replenishment. Therefore, restoring the population after the war became Kim Il-sung's top priority. To address this issue, he introduced a series of policies aimed at encouraging people to have more children. First, he linked having many children to the goal of building a powerful socialist nation. He repeatedly called on women to bear more children for the benefit of the country, to provide more laborers and soldiers. North Korea once implemented economic policies to encourage citizens to have more children. Specifically, larger families would receive additional food rations and be given priority in housing allocation. Heroic mother. So that mothers can return to work early while maintaining labor productivity and contributing to the nation's development. Pro-natal policies. North Korea's population reached approximately 14.5 million people. However, in reality, as early as 1960, South Korea. However, in the pre-industrial era, those who could not participate in agricultural production were often considered surplus population and became a burden to the nation. It was not until South Korea's economy boomed and its manufacturing sector expanded vigorously that this surplus population became a major economic driving force. South Korea not only closed the gap with North Korea but also rapidly surpassed its GDP in the 1970s. This development made Kim Il-sung deeply uneasy. However, his impractical and hastily implemented policies plunged the nation's destiny into severe decline, causing the birth rate to plummet uncontrollably from its previous peak. Between 1950 and 1960, North Korea's industrialization process relied primarily on aid in the form of capital and equipment from the Soviet Union and Eastern Bloc countries. However, by the 1970s, these very countries themselves fell into economic crisis and no longer had the capacity to continue providing aid to North Korea. To further develop the defense industry, Kim Il-sung shifted to borrowing fabrics from Western countries. In the late 1970s, North Korea issued international bonds with a total value equivalent to approximately 680 million German marks and 455 million Swiss francs to purchase equipment and technology from Western countries. However, this bold move quickly encountered a sudden and devastating blow. At that time, the entire world was reeling from the oil crisis. The price of oil had increased tenfold between 1973 and 1980. Global inflation has surged, significantly driving up North Korea's import costs. Meanwhile, the prices of its key export commodities, such as minerals and raw materials, have failed to keep pace with the rising cost of oil. The consequence was a growing budget deficit in North Korea. Moreover, the imported technology and production lines failed to operate effectively due to outdated management, a shortage of skilled labor, poor maintenance, and numerous other technical issues, resulting in low output and poor productivity. Finally, Kim Il-sung's regime fell into a debt crisis. By 1984, North Korea officially declared default on its loans from Western banks, amounting to nearly $1 billion. From that point on, North Korea's international credibility completely collapsed, leading to its exclusion from the global financial system and the loss of all access to commercial loans. Its population has reached approximately 40.4 million people, while North Korea, biding its time and building strength. It never rains but it pours. Drought and a series of other natural disasters also occurred as North Korea's already fragile food supply system completely collapsed. Arduous march. Of course, the Kim dynasty absolutely refuses to acknowledge that the disaster was a consequence of their misguided policies. They incessantly drill into the heads of the North Korean people the rhetoric that it is precisely because of exploitation and encirclement by imperialist forces that the people have had to suffer so greatly. The arduous march, an official term used by the North Korean government to describe the catastrophic famine that occurred in the country in the mid-1990s. The 4-year-long war claimed the lives of millions. While the North Korean government only acknowledges a death toll of approximately 220,000, international organizations estimate that from 1994 to 1998, the number of people who died of starvation was between 2.4 and 3.5 million, equivalent to 10% to 15% of the country's total population. During those 4 years, North Korea suffered human losses even more severe than the 3-year Korean War that preceded it, and the most tragic part was that this was only the beginning of the catastrophe. Since that period, North Korea has never truly had the opportunity to recover. It was also from the mid-1990s that the wave of defections began to explode. Despite the risk of being shot dead at the border or having their entire families sent to re-education camps, many North Koreans still risk their lives to cross the border into South Korea or China. Illegal migration is also a significant cause of population decline, an issue no less serious. From 1994 to 2018, the number of North Korean defectors each year ranged from several hundred to several thousand people. To curb this wave, the North Korean government has reinstated public executions by firing squad and collective executions for deterrent purposes. The elimination of victims by this regime also means they are erased from the population, making it impossible for international observers to accurately account for them. In 2008, the North Korean government published its first population report since the end of the arduous, protracted resistance war, stating the country's population was 24.05 million. That same year, the population of South Korea had already surpassed 49 million people. By 2011, Kim Jong Un officially succeeded to the leadership, declaring a pursuit of the parallel policy, which means prioritizing both military development and improving the people's standard of living. Kim Jong Un once vowed that the North Korean people would eat white rice and meat soup. However, that promise was instantly betrayed by none other than himself when Kim Jong Un immediately launched an ambitious nuclear weapons development program. Over a 10-year period, from 2012 to 2022, North Korea conducted 6 nuclear tests and launched hundreds of missiles. Military spending increased from 75% to 100%, accounting for approximately 25% to 33% of GDP. In other words, nearly 1/3 of the nation's total output was poured into the military sector. North Korea's current military spending ratio is the highest in the world. In normal countries, the defense budget typically accounts for less than 10% of GDP. Currently, only Ukraine, which is in a state of war, can match North Korea in terms of economic militarization. But the noteworthy point here is that North Korea is isolated on the international stage, making access to external resources extremely difficult. Consequently, the regime is forced to cut social welfare spending and extract benefits from its people to fund its military budget. By 2021, the national slogan calling on the entire people to overcome hardship once again rang out. This time, however, the challenge for North Korea was not famine or war, but a silent yet extremely dangerous crisis, a demographic crisis. Since 2021, the North Korean government has announced that the country's total population has reached 25.8 million people. But behind that seemingly stable figure lies a concerning reality. The proportion of people aged 65 and over has reached 11.4%, marking a clear transition of North Korea into an aging society. You might think that the issue of population aging is only a concern for developed countries like Japan or Germany. However, population aging is no longer an issue exclusive to developed nations. It has become a powerful wave, spreading globally and encompassing even poor and isolated countries like North Korea. According to the international definition, a country is considered to have entered the stage of population aging when the proportion of people aged 65 and over exceeds 7%. When this ratio exceeds 14%, the society becomes an aged society. If this ratio reaches 20% or more, it is called super-aging, an extremely dangerous demographic state. So what happens to a super-aged nation? The answer is essentially an irreversible decline. Only the last 2 conditions need to occur. The birth rate remains at a low level of 2 children per woman and there is no wave of immigration to compensate for the population. At that point, the country will fall into a situation where the labor force and working age population are increasingly shrinking, while the proportion of elderly people requiring care continues to rise. When the number of workers is smaller than the number of dependents, the burden on the younger generation becomes unbearable. And if this situation is not remedied, a nation may perish, not because of war, but because it no longer has enough people to sustain its existence. However, if we consider only the absolute figures, North Korea is not the country with the oldest population in the world. The reason is that the average life expectancy here is much lower than in developed countries, resulting in a lower proportion of people living to old age. However, this does not diminish the severity of the issue, as the combination of low life expectancy, declining birth rates, and a massive wave of migration is rapidly weakening the nation. Meanwhile, countries that have reached the threshold of population aging, such as Japan, Italy, and Portugal, have all officially entered the stage of super-aging. South Korea, the southern neighbor of North Korea, has also rapidly become an aging society. Meanwhile, China officially entered this phase as early as 2002. Faced with the global wave of population aging, these countries are striving to respond with 2 key strategies. The government provides direct financial support to families for child rearing. Since 2003, Japan has implemented a financial support policy through various subsidies such as childbirth grants, child allowances, and tuition assistance. The clear objective of these policies is to help young people no longer feel apprehensive about having and raising children. Not to be outdone, South Korea also implemented a policy in 2010 that provides monthly cash allowances to households with young children, with the level of support increasing incrementally each year. Everyone hopes to make young parents feel that while giving birth is arduous, it becomes somewhat less worrisome when the costs are shared with the government. Second strategy. open the door to welcome immigrants. Japan and South Korea, two nations long known for their restrictive immigration policies, are now being forced to change. They have relaxed immigration laws, allowing workers from developing countries to come to work, settle permanently, and even obtain citizenship. According to statistics, from 2000 to 2025, Japan has attracted approximately 1.9 million new immigrants, a figure that is even higher in South Korea. So what about North Korea? Currently, as many countries around the world are actively opening up, increasing investment in education, and promoting pro-natalist policies. In response to its aging population and to attract immigrants, North Korea continues to maintain a closed development model. This country continues to urge its citizens to have children, framing it as a national duty, while simultaneously maintaining a firm stance with familiar domestic political messaging. Due to its unique economic conditions and political system, North Korea currently does not implement large-scale social welfare programs, nor does it enforce policies that allow immigration. This situation has left the country facing numerous challenges, most notably an aging and declining population. According to statistics, over the past 2 decades, Japan and South Korea have taken in 2.55 million and 2.63 million immigrants respectively. This is considered one of the effective solutions to compensate for the labor shortage and improve the population structure. However, 2 common strategies to address population aging, encouraging childbirth and attracting immigrants, have not yet been implemented by North Korea, due to numerous factors stemming from the country's specific policies and unique context. Why is that? The reason lies in the limited national budget, which makes it difficult to effectively implement social welfare programs or childbearing incentive policies. Regarding the ability to attract immigrants as a solution for population balance, this is currently not feasible in the context of North Korea still enforcing strict border control policies. Migration into North Korea is extremely rare, primarily due to the country's socio-economic conditions and its unique status in the international community. Currently, North Korea still allocates the majority of its budget and development priorities to the defense sector. Meanwhile, foreign policies and domestic control measures continue to be strictly maintained. These factors have profoundly impacted the quality of life and psychological well-being of the people, while also contributing to the acceleration of population decline. Recently, a serious event has occurred that has further exacerbated the demographic concerns in North Korea: the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 struck when people's health and immune systems were at their weakest. In 2012, the Korean Central News Agency, KCNA, first announced official information about the COVID-19 outbreak in the country, with the total number of recorded infections exceeding 4 million cases. According to the North Korean government's announcement, the total number of deaths from the pandemic is 71, with only 1 case believed to be related to the Omicron BA.2 variant. State media emphasized that these statements highlight the effective management and leadership role of Chairman Kim Jong Un in pandemic control efforts. However, these statistics have attracted both interest and skepticism from the international community. Some medical experts and observers suggest that the data may not fully reflect reality. Due to limitations in testing capacity, healthcare infrastructure, and a lack of transparency in reporting epidemiological information. The first reason is that North Korea refused to use the vaccine. From 2021 to 2022, the COVAX facility, an alliance established by UNICEF and several other international organizations, to distribute free vaccines to poor countries, many organizations have repeatedly offered vaccine aid to North Korea. In the global vaccine distribution process, the COVAX initiative has repeatedly offered support to North Korea to support this country in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the report, a total of 5 aid proposals have been put forward. However, all of these proposals were rejected by the North Korean side, and the official reason for this refusal was never clearly disclosed. The refusal of vaccine supplies from international organizations has raised concerns within the international community regarding the risk of disease outbreaks, while the domestic healthcare system still faces multiple limitations. Medical experts assess that this decision could potentially expose North Korean citizens to greater risks. In the prevention and treatment of COVID-19. After repeatedly refusing outright, Mrs. Vaccine has finally announced she will provide vaccines to North Korea. A period at the end of their last free chance. The second reason is that North Korea's healthcare system is extremely weak. Unlike countries with developed healthcare systems, North Korea has virtually no specialized care system. Intensive care unit, ICU, ventilators, and effective antiviral medications. Doctors are in short supply, medicine is scarce, and hospitals exist in name only. When the illness has progressed severely, the chances of saving the patient are very low. The third reason is that the population suffered from malnutrition, leading to sluggish reactions. According to reports from several humanitarian organizations, approximately 40% of North Korea's population is living in a state of chronic malnutrition. They lack protein, lack vitamins, and don't even have enough energy to fight off illnesses. With such a physical condition, the mortality rate after contracting COVID-19 is very high. It will certainly be much higher than the global average. In short, reporting only 71 deaths out of over 4 million infections is an unrealistic and unacceptable figure. But for a government that relies on information control and propaganda like North Korea's, the truth may never be revealed. One of the reasons why North Korea's COVID-19 infection and death toll figures are not considered credible. This is because the country's testing capacity remains very limited. Rapid antigen test kits are a crucial basic tool for detecting infections. Many areas don't even have the conditions to perform testing. Therefore, the 4.7 million infections announced by the authorities are likely just the tip of the iceberg. In reality, the actual number of infections could be much higher, as even the nation's leader has experienced a severe high fever. To the point of being unable to attend the nationwide pandemic response summary conference held on August 10, 2022. So how can one believe that in such a horrific pandemic, the entire country only had slightly over 70 fatalities? Some argue that this is clearly a figure fabricated by the state to paint a picture of pandemic victory. Under the wise leadership of our leader, we march forward steadily, undeterred by any external difficulties or challenges. If we add the damages caused by the COVID-19 pandemic to the overall picture, North Korea's current population crisis is in fact far more severe than the published figures suggest. In a rare event, North Korean leader Kim Jong Un displayed strong emotions at the North Korean Mothers' Congress. Here, he moved the audience to tears. This image is a complete departure from his usual stern leader persona, and that very fact has captured special attention from the international community. Now the question arises, can this emotionally charged message help strengthen the public's trust? It also fosters a spirit of readiness to contribute to the nation, especially in the context of the state's call to increase the birth rate to address the population decline. According to accounts from those who have left North Korea, the country's authorities are still actively implementing measures to encourage childbirth. Meanwhile, the majority of the population within the country continues to live in an environment where information is tightly controlled, with limited opportunities to be exposed to diverse external perspectives. According to an unofficial statistic, each mother receives a childbirth subsidy of about 3,000 North Korean won, equivalent to $3.50. With that amount of money, they could only afford 1 pound of dry cereal, let alone a pound of rice, much less milk or seafood for infants. As recently as 2004, over 80% of adult women in North Korea had never used modern sanitary pads. They still had to use cloth as in pre-modern times, in a country isolated from the world, where feminine hygiene products were considered a luxury. Approximately 80% of married women still give birth at home, a practice that appears largely unchanged from decades ago. Not because they want to, but because they have no other choice. There was virtually no transportation, hospitals frequently lost power, there was no heating system for winter, and they weren't even allowed to light stoves. Therefore, even those living near hospitals choose to give birth at home, because at least there they have family warmth and necessary privacy. The harshness of life does not end at childbirth. Due to severe malnutrition, most mothers face pregnancy complications, have frail bodies, and lose a lot of blood during delivery. Children are often born sickly and malnourished from the womb, with an extremely high infant mortality rate. The heartbreaking reality is that just days after giving birth, many mothers are forced to return to work, even as their bodies are still bleeding, in pain, and have not yet recovered. They had no time to rest, no nutritious milk, and no one to share the burden of childcare. The only thing they had was the pressure to carry everything on their own shoulders. As for husbands, whether they serve in the military, work in government agencies, or public non-business units, the salary they receive can hardly support even themselves, let alone their entire families. All burdens fell upon the wife's shoulders, from black market trading and rationing every morsel of food to scraping together every penny for survival. In 2021, a woman around 30 years old was interviewed by a population research institute after escaping to South Korea. She sat motionless, her face cold, her eyes vacant. She recounted having given birth to a child, despite the free prenatal checkups provided by the maternity hospital. But she had never once set foot there, because every day she had to shoulder her goods and roam everywhere, toiling tirelessly to earn every penny to save. Even on the day she was about to give birth, she still had to trek out to work. When the labor pains struck, she gave birth to the child alone at home. The infant lived for only a few minutes. She didn't know whether it was a boy or a girl, nor did she want to know. She sighed, her eyes quietly gazing down at the ground where the last tear had dried at the corner of her eye before it could even fall. Just a single tear, but behind that emotional moment lie the harsh realities that countless young North Korean women silently endure in their daily lives. Except for a small segment of the privileged class, the majority of North Korean women today do not wish to have children. According to multiple sources, there are many cases where individuals quietly terminate their pregnancies despite the severe consequences they could face if discovered. The reason behind those agonizing choices stems from an extremely harsh reality of life. For many women, giving birth in North Korea is an extremely harsh experience, far beyond what they could imagine, both physically and mentally. In such circumstances, the anxiety after giving birth can sometimes be greater than the fear of punishment. Based on the latest data from the United Nations Population Division, it is estimated that North Korea's population will reach approximately 26.57 million people by 2025. However, the birth rate is only about 1.7 to 1.8 children per woman, which is below the replacement level. This means the population is gradually shrinking. Based on these models, the artificial intelligence simulating the population produced two scenarios for North Korea's future. Scenario 1. The temporary emergency measures prove effective. If the government continues to encourage childbirth by invoking the tears of leader Kim Jong Un while simultaneously enforcing strict anti-abortion policies. And if the birth rate remains stable at 1.7 over the next few decades, then around the 2050 to 2060 period, North Korea will officially enter a super-aged era, when the elderly population accounts for over 20% of the total population. From 2080 to 2100, the population is forecast to decline sharply, to only about 10 to 15 million people. The workforce will be smaller than the elderly population, making society incapable of sustaining production and development. At that point, North Korea will become a completely declining society. Scenario 2. No one heeds the leader's advice, and the situation of unchecked childbirth continues unabated. Period. Police. In just the next 30 to 40 years, around the 2070s to 2090s, North Korea will transition from a super-aged society to a period of population decline. At that point,